The Middle Ages are usually depicted romantically: knights, tournaments, and noble horses carrying their masters toward glory. But this story isn't about that. There's no romance, heroism, or greatness here, only the harsh truth of a simple, stable hand's everyday life. From dawn until dusk, from youth until old age, you spend your days among dirt, cold, manure, and the endless bites of horses you must care for. But before you get comfortable, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is right now. I'm really curious to see who's joining us. Now, settle in comfortably. We're about to begin. You never dreamed of becoming a stable boy, but dreams, much like good food and clean water, were never guaranteed to someone born into the muddy streets of the medieval countryside. Your destiny was simple enough. You lived close to horses, therefore, horses became your trade. No one asked if you liked them. Certainly, no one asked if they liked you. Your day begins long before sunrise, and it always feels as though you've just fallen asleep. You wake to darkness so complete it tastes like damp wool on your tongue. You blink your eyes open to the familiar stench of manure, pungent and rich enough to choke you before you've even risen from the straw. Your muscles complain bitterly, each bone creaking like old wooden doors. Your hands, rough and cracked, fumble blindly around until they grasp your only friend, a battered bucket whose handles long ago rusted off. You don't love it, but it doesn't bite or kick. In this place, that counts for something. You rise carefully, wary of waking the mare that sleeps nearest to you. She is valuable, well fed, and deeply spoiled. You're none of those things. She's named Eleanor, after the lady of the house, which seems fitting because she shares the lady's temperament and habit of biting at anyone who comes too close. You manage to get past her stall without causing disturbance, slipping out into the bitterly cold air of early morning. The chill immediately claws through your thin shirt, stiff with dirt, sweat, and dried hay. The cold seeps into your bones and settles there, an unwelcome guest that never leaves. Outside, your breath clouds before your face. The stable yard is silent and dark, an eerie quiet broken only by the faint rustle of rodents scuttling away from your steps. Your eyes have adjusted enough to make out familiar shapes: the low outlines of fences, piles of hay, buckets stacked carelessly against the wall. The faint silhouette of the manor house looms above, dark windows staring at you indifferently. The people there are asleep beneath thick blankets. You've never known that luxury, and envy flickers briefly through your mind, then vanishes, because horses wait for no man's envy. You find your pitchfork and plunge it into the stack of hay, dislodging an unhappy rat that flees noisily into the dark. You lift the forkful of damp hay and carry it inside the stable, methodically portioning feed to each horse. The horses grunt softly, impatiently, their breath hot and heavy. Occasionally, one stamps irritably, sending dirt and straw flying in your direction. You cough and spit fragments of hay, teeth gritty with dust and grime. Your hands ache from yesterday's work. Cuts and scratches burn anew as they rub against splintered wood and gritty grain. The horses eat greedily, unbothered by your pain or exhaustion. Watching them chew, you momentarily forget your discomfort, lulled by the rhythmic grinding of powerful jaws. Then Eleanor swings her head violently toward you, nearly catching your fingers between sharp teeth. You snatch your hand back just in time. She snorts disdainfully. Horses always remind you of your place, even when you'd briefly forgotten it. Next come the water troughs. You drag a bucket from the well, your breath rasping in the frozen air. The water sloshes down your legs, icy enough to numb your toes through your patched boots. You imagine losing a toe to frostbite, though realistically, you know something else will probably kill you first. Perhaps a horse kick or a fever from infected wounds. Maybe a simple cough that just won't leave. You empty the bucket and into Eleanor's trough. She sniffs disdainfully, then laps it up anyway. Gratitude isn't something you've come to expect, even from animals. After feeding and watering comes the cleaning, perhaps your least favorite chore, although it's hard to rank such things when everything you do seems equally miserable. You pick up the manure shovel and set about your task, the wetness of fresh dung mixing with mud and straw underfoot. The horses shift irritably, often waiting until you've cleared a stall before soiling it again. Eleanor, in particular, seems to delight in your frustration, maintaining unblinking eye contact as she drops a steaming pile precisely where you just stood. Hours pass unnoticed, marked only by the gradual graying of the sky outside. You pause to stretch your aching back, hearing your spine crack audibly. Briefly, you close your eyes, just long enough to imagine life elsewhere, perhaps as a farmer, a baker, or a traveling peddler. But such fantasies dissolve instantly, replaced by the relentless pull of reality. More manure, more water, more hay. Around dawn, you hear distant footsteps. The manor wakes, the kitchen servants hurry past, bustling with early duties. They glance briefly toward you, then look away quickly, as if eye contact with a stable boy might curse them to a similar fate. Soon the master will rise, demanding his horse saddled and ready. You dread this most of all. He's always impatient, always displeased, no matter how promptly you work. If his horse stumbles, it's your fault. If he dislikes the pace, you're whipped for sloppiness. If the weather turns sour, he'll blame you for delaying his ride. But for now, the stables remain your solitary kingdom, grimy and stinking, yet undeniably yours. You lean on the shovel, savoring a rare moment of quiet between chores. Eleanor huffs softly, nudging your arm, perhaps demanding attention or simply reminding you that she's there, a living, breathing responsibility. You reach hesitantly to scratch her nose, but she jerks away irritably, as if offended by your presumption. You sigh heavily, unsurprised by rejection even from a horse. You wipe sweat and dirt from your forehead with the back of your filthy hand, feeling older than your years. The day has barely begun, and you're already exhausted. You know this day will be exactly like yesterday, and tomorrow exactly like today. The life of a stable boy repeats itself endlessly, predictably, each morning identical, each task unchanging, each hardship unrelenting. You pick up the shovel again, resigned dreams might be for other men. Your reality is here, in the mud, the cold, and the stink of manure. A stable boy's life isn't much to speak of, but it's your life, tedious, miserable, but yours. Tomorrow will come, and you'll repeat the cycle again, rising in darkness, cold in your bones, hay stuck in your teeth. You never asked for this life, but then again, no one ever does. You always thought the hard part of being a stable hand was getting up at an ungodly hour, shoveling endless heaps of manure, or enduring the winter cold, biting your fingers until they were numb. But it turns out the worst of your troubles lay hidden in the complexities of horse care itself: feeding, grooming, trimming, healing wounds, tasks simple in theory, yet brutal in practice. Feeding seems straightforward. Throw hay, offer water, repeat daily. But nothing in your life is truly simple. The hay isn't soft, golden straw. It's often moldy, thick with dust, tangled with weeds and thistles that pierce your palms, embedding splinters deep into your calloused skin. No gloves for you. Gloves are for blacksmiths and falconers, men whose hands matter. You have only your raw fingers, cracked from constant moisture, cut by hidden blades of stiff grass. Morning after morning, you lug heavy sacks of oats, your shoulders bowed under the weight as grains spill onto the muddy floor, attracting hungry rats who watch you openly now, no longer afraid. They've learned you pose no threat. After all, you barely threaten the horses who regularly bite chunks from your clothing, mistaking your ragged sleeves for bundles of hay. You don't blame them. Your life and the feed sacks smell indistinguishably alike. Each horse eats differently, and each demands its own peculiar attention. Eleanor, that hateful beast, eats with malicious precision, always lifting her head just as you approach, spilling half chewed oats onto your boots. Another horse, Tobias, is a nervous creature, prone to kicking the stall walls, scattering feed everywhere except his trough. He's handsome, valuable, and utterly untrainable, much like the young nobleman who rides him. Then comes grooming, a cruel joke the universe invented specifically for you. You brush the horses every day, not because you care how they look, but because their owners demand animals that gleam in sunlight. The stable master inspects each mane, every tail. Your survival depends on passing his inspection. You drag stiff brushes through tangled manes, tearing through knots as horses toss their heads impatiently. You've learned quickly to dodge sudden kicks, though bruises on your ribs still heal too slowly. A horse's kick, you've found, is nature's direct response to human foolishness, and you, sadly, embody that foolishness often. Cleaning hooves is worse. You grip a leg as thick as a small tree trunk, leaning awkwardly as the horse shifts weight unpredictably. One moment's distraction, and the hoof drops onto your foot, crushing your toes painfully through worn out leather. And there, trapped in the hoof, is always something rotten, a stone, packed manure, or a festering infection. You've grown familiar with the acrid smell of hoof rot, a scent so foul that even rats flee. You scrape and cut away at infected flesh, your stomach churning at the sticky mess clinging stubbornly beneath your fingernails. Then there's the blacksmith, your unwelcome partner in suffering. Twice a month, you must escort restless animals to have their hooves trimmed and shod. This would be tolerable if not for the smith himself, a large, humorless man, perpetually reeking of stale beer and hot metal. He frequently misses nails, sometimes sending sharp metal points through the tender flesh of the horse's hoof. Each time the animal jerks in agony, you risk losing teeth or fingers. You hold the bridle firmly, whispering empty reassurances while the smith curses drunkenly, blaming you for his mistakes. Trimming manes and tails is another torture masked as routine care. Owners demand neatly cut, aesthetically pleasing horses, but horses dislike scissors as much as you dislike the horses. They thrash, pull away, and sometimes rear up dangerously. Last spring, a frightened mare pulled free so violently she slammed your shoulder into the stable post, dislocating it. It never healed properly, leaving you with a dull, throbbing ache every time it rains, which naturally is often. Then, inevitably, there's blood. Horses constantly injure themselves or one another, and cleaning their wounds is solely your responsibility. The stable master supplies only vinegar, water, and crude ointments made from herbs that sting your eyes as much as they sting open wounds. Your fingers fumble through blood matted fur, cleaning out dirt, inspecting torn skin. Some wounds heal quickly, others become foul, inflamed horrors that force you to endure endless accusations from nobles who see each injury as your failure. Worse, horses regularly injure you. Eleanor once bit your forearm so deeply you could count her teeth in the bruise. You cleaned your wound alone, vinegar stinging viciously as tears welled in your eyes, tears of humiliation, not pain, because even the mare seemed satisfied she'd taught you a lesson. Another time, a stallion stomped your thigh, leaving a permanent indentation in your flesh. You limped for weeks, silently enduring the stable master's scolding for moving too slowly. Yet, strangely, despite all the misery, you've learned to identify with these animals. They live constrained, fed just enough to survive, driven by whims of masters who barely understand their needs. You're not so different. Perhaps that's why you harbor no real resentment toward them. Their bites, kicks, and unpredictable tempers merely mirror your own frustrations. Together, you suffer under a shared burden. But sentimentality fades quickly when you're knee deep in muck, exhausted beyond measure, and bleeding from freshly inflicted injuries. The reality is clear. Horses mean nothing but trouble and pain. The romantic tales of knights galloping heroically vanish as soon as you see a stallion kick a wooden gate to splinters. Noble mounts and stories never bite stable boys. Real horses always do. As evening descends once again, you finish your duties. The horses, finally satisfied, ignore you entirely, turning their massive bodies toward the walls. You clean the last brush, rinsing it in ice cold water as your cracked fingers burn fiercely. With a sigh, you rest briefly, leaning against the stable wall, feeling each wound, each bruise throbbing with dull familiarity. This is your existence, defined by feeding, grooming, trimming, and cleaning wounds, an endless cycle filled with dirt, discomfort, and danger. Today was difficult, and tomorrow will be worse. Each day drains you further, yet your reward remains the same: survival and nothing more. In the end, hooves, blood, and feed define your life more honestly than any dreams you might once have had. Horses, you've learned bitterly, offer neither glory nor gratitude, only an endless repetition of tasks that slowly erode your strength, your patience, and your spirit. Yet tomorrow morning, you'll rise once again to their impatient stamping and hungry snorts, trapped forever in your grim, thankless world. Winter arrives in the stables like an unwelcome relative, sudden, bitter, and guaranteed to overstay its welcome. Cold months don't bring rest or ease, only intensified hardship, magnified discomfort, and misery frozen solid. If you imagined that life as a stable hand could not possibly become worse, winter quickly disabuses you of that naive thought. You wake now in pitch darkness, feeling frozen straw poke mercilessly into your numb skin. The thin blanket that once offered meager protection now seems little more than damp, rough cloth stiffened by frost. Breathing comes slowly, painfully, your lungs burning from the raw, icy air. Rising is an exercise in willpower, your joints aching loudly in protest, each stiff limb resisting movement like rusted hinges on forgotten doors. Outside, snow blankets everything, deceptively peaceful in appearance, hiding treacherous patches of ice that send you sprawling multiple times each morning. Bruises and scrapes now cover your body constantly, some from horses, others from cruel ice or unforgiving stone. You curse softly, breath steaming, knowing it makes no difference. Winter listens to no man's complaint. Inside the stable, winter amplifies every unpleasantness. Manure, once merely foul smelling and abundant, now freezes solid overnight into dark, icy piles, nearly impossible to shovel. You swing your metal shovel repeatedly against frozen dung, each jarring impact reverberating painfully through your wrists. Chips of manure scatter into your face, tiny fragments sticking to your eyelashes and lips. Your curses intensify, unheard by anything except horses that stare indifferently, offering no sympathy. And when frozen dung finally yields, it reveals something worse beneath: an acrid, rotting layer of filth, warmed just enough by sleeping animals to produce a rank, eye watering vapor. This stench, winter's gift to stable boys everywhere, clings to your clothes, hair, and skin permanently. You wash your hands occasionally in icy water, scraping futilely at embedded filth it never truly leaves. The cold, stagnant water in the troughs freezes nightly, forcing you to break the ice with bare fists or a rusted iron rod slicing open knuckles daily. Horses drink greedily once the surface breaks, indifferent to droplets of your blood mixing with the water. You briefly consider the irony. Horses more valued than yourself, consuming traces of your sacrifice. It feels oddly fitting. Cold breeds illness as surely as warmth breeds flies. Soon horses begin coughing, sneezing, suffering ailments you scarcely comprehend, yet you're expected to treat. A stable hand is a healer by necessity, not skill. Your medical kit, rusted knives, vinegar, pungent herbs, offers little comfort and even less healing. You dread morning inspections, knowing you'll find another horse shivering, wheezing, or collapsed weakly onto the icy floor. The mare. Eleanor contracts a cough severe enough to make her appear almost pitiable. You, against better judgment, offer comfort, a soft hand upon her neck, and promptly receive a vicious bite, her teeth leaving deep, bleeding marks. Your compassion vanishes quickly, replaced by the familiar bitterness of reality. Horses, you've learned repeatedly, repay kindness only with pain. Your body fares no better. Winter infestations torment you, bringing relentless itching and creeping sensations beneath filthy clothing. Fleas, lice, and worse creatures crawl across your scalp and skin, thriving beneath your thin clothes. You scratch constantly, fingernails digging raw trenches into your skin. Occasionally, in exhausted delirium, you imagine worms burrowing within your flesh, mirroring the parasites invading stable floors and walls. At night, vermin emerge boldly, no longer fearful of humans weakened by cold. Rats grow audacious, gnawing holes in boots, blankets, and even fingers if left exposed too long in sleep. You awaken frequently, startled awake by skittering feet brushing your face. Your dreams are haunted by tiny claws and sharp teeth, each nightmare feeling scarcely distinguishable from reality. Food, already scarce and miserable, becomes truly bleak. Bread freezes solid, impossible to bite, tasting vaguely of sawdust and mold. Soup, when available, is cold and thickened into unappealing sludge. Hunger gnaws incessantly, weakening muscles, dulling senses. Sometimes you eat grain intended for horses, chewing bitter oats that grind painfully between broken teeth. Horses, of course, eat better than you. Nobility always does. Illness and death arrive together, unsurprisingly. Stable hands, weakened by exposure and neglect, fall ill frequently. Last week, the young stable boy who worked beside you collapsed suddenly, his fevered body shaking uncontrollably. You dragged him to a corner, covering him with straw, listening as his ragged breathing finally ceased. No one mourned openly. You buried him hastily behind the stable, his grave marked only by a snow-covered pile of stones. You wonder briefly if anyone would notice your absence, should winter claim you next. Yet life continues grimly. Horses die quietly too, succumbing to infections, injuries, or simple neglect. Bodies must be moved quickly, dragged through heavy snow by you and other workers, numb fingers clutching ropes, muscles screaming in protest. You stack corpses behind a shed where scavengers circle patiently. Sometimes you envy the horses, their burdens finally lifted. Occasionally, visitors appear, wealthy men in thick cloaks, inspecting prized mounts and demanding better conditions for animals, never workers. They complain of drafts, neglecting to notice your blue fingers or frost-bitten ears. You stand silently, head lowered, trembling slightly from cold and exhaustion, resentment boiling quietly beneath your passive gaze. Eventually, they leave, satisfied or not, returning to warm halls and roaring fires. You remain in cold darkness, tasked once again with spreading frozen hay, tending sick animals, and enduring the unending cruelty of winter. You look briefly toward the manor house, windows lit warmly, imagining warmth, laughter, or simple human comfort. But imagination is as dangerous as frostbite, offering false hope and inevitable disappointment. Night returns, earlier each day. Your bones ache from constant dampness. Your cough deepens ominously. You curl into cold straw, listening bitterly to horses shifting restlessly, rats scurrying beneath floorboards. Tomorrow promises no relief, only more ice, filth, and misery. Winter teaches a harsh lesson. Misery, like cold, seeps deeply into you, shaping bones, thoughts, and dreams. Your life feels endless, defined by cold manure, relentless vermin, and daily suffering. You shiver uncontrollably, silently wishing for spring, not from optimism, but sheer desperation. As sleep finally overtakes you, wrapped in icy darkness, one grim certainty remains clear. Life as a stable hand, brutal at the best of times, becomes nearly unbearable when combined with winter's cruel touch. Yet tomorrow you'll rise again, breaking ice, clearing dung, enduring misery without end. After all, someone must suffer, and winter ensures, unkindly, that someone is always you. You've always known your place in this world. If ever you dared forget, your daily interactions with master, horse, and the merciless stable itself provide stark reminders. You exist, quite simply, to serve, caught forever in the shadow between nobleman and beast, neither truly human nor animal, but something uncomfortably in between. These worlds rarely intersect, except through you, and each demands endless attention while offering nothing in return. Your master arises early, but unlike you, he wakes warm, fed, and comfortable. You stand shivering in the stable yard, breath fogging before your cracked lips, awaiting his inevitable arrival. He storms from the manor, heavy boots clattering angrily across cold stone. You recognize his stride from a distance, sharp and impatient, as if the very ground offends him. He sees you, small, hunched, and miserable, and scowls, annoyed by your very existence. You're used to this, having long accepted your perpetual disappointment to him. You quickly fetch his horse, Tobias, already saddled with painful precision. One missed strap or loose buckle, and punishment swiftly follows. Tobias shifts nervously, sensing tension. Your own anxiety mirrors the horse's. Both of you live under the master's harsh scrutiny, fearful of inevitable failure. Hold him steady, your master snaps, voice edged with frustration. You grip Tobias's bridle tightly, whispering desperate pleas for calm. Tobias ignores you entirely, pawing restlessly at frozen mud. Your master mounts roughly, heels digging cruelly into Tobias's flanks. The horse lurches forward abruptly, nearly trampling your feet. Mud sprays your face, but you hold still, knowing better than to protest. It's your job, after all, to absorb indignities silently. When your master returns, inevitably displeased, blame falls squarely upon you. Tobias stumbled, your fault. Saddle uncomfortable, your incompetence. Weather turned sour mid ride, somehow also your doing. Punishments vary, but remain consistently harsh, whipping, withheld food, or hours spent performing the most humiliating chores under watchful eyes. You accept punishment quietly, eyes cast downward, bitterness hidden behind practiced obedience. Yet, strangely, you feel little true anger toward the man. He lives in a different world entirely, one you cannot comprehend. To him, you're scarcely human, merely another tool alongside saddle and stirrup. Occasionally, he tosses copper coins at your feet, compensation laced with contempt. You pocket them, grateful despite yourself, though their value scarcely covers the bruises and indignities suffered daily. The horse lives in another separate world, one of instinct, fear, and power. Horses, you've realized bitterly, hold far more dignity and value than yourself. They receive care, grooming, and food, their health meticulously tracked. Meanwhile, your injuries and hunger remain invisible, ignored entirely by those around you. Tobias, the master's prized mount, possesses a beauty and pride you've never felt. Even nervous and temperamental, Tobias commands respect from all who encounter him. You envy his sleek mane, glossy coat, and powerful build. Yet he remains unaware of this admiration, treating you with indifferent disdain. You lead him carefully, watching muscles ripple effortlessly beneath his coat, feeling your own aching muscles twitch resentfully in response. Sometimes you secretly wish harm upon Tobias, nothing severe, merely a slight lameness, temporary inconvenience, just enough discomfort to briefly level your positions. Yet, whenever Tobias actually suffers injury or sickness, pity quickly overtakes resentment. You nurse him carefully, treating wounds gently, fully aware the horse will repay you only with bites or kicks. Still, compassion persists stubbornly, perhaps because Tobias, like yourself, lacks real control over his fate. Then there's Eleanor, the mare whose dislike toward you borders on personal hatred. Despite her hostility, Eleanor holds undeniable value as the master's favorite breeding mare. To you, she represents all that horses symbolize: strength, beauty, privilege, and total disregard for those beneath her station. She frequently bites, kicks, or deliberately soils freshly cleaned stalls. You grit your teeth, tolerating her cruelty quietly. Complaining would only invite mockery. Besides, horses' comfort always outweighs your own safety. Your master notices nothing of this, indifferent to your bruised ribs or bleeding fingers. To him, Eleanor's aggression merely proves your incompetence. Your stable master, too, lives separately, contentedly unaware of your daily humiliations. His role involves supervising, shouting orders, and harsh discipline, but never sharing your suffering or exhaustion. He avoids dirt beneath fingernails, leaving physical labor entirely to stable hands, conveniently oblivious to the toll exacted by endless work and constant fear. Occasionally, knights arrive, riding proud war horses bred specifically for battle. To knights, you're even less than a shadow, a mere inconvenience scurrying silently beneath notice. Knights see only their mounts, powerful, aggressive beasts, as arrogant and dismissive as their riders. You handle these animals cautiously, knowing one false move means injury or humiliation. Still, knights criticize constantly: too slow, too clumsy, too insignificant. Once, you made the mistake of meeting a knight's gaze. His disdain burned through you, more painful than blows or kicks. Since then, you keep your eyes lowered permanently, fully internalizing your own worthlessness. Knights inhabit a world of honor and glory, worlds forever closed to creatures like you. Even fellow servants regard you suspiciously, viewing stable hands as lower beings, filthy, crude, always smelling faintly of manure. They keep distance instinctively, as if poverty or filth might infect them through mere proximity. You feel isolated constantly, even among supposed peers, another painful lesson of the worlds dividing you. At night, alone in the stable, you reflect bitterly on these divisions. Master lives comfortably, horses receive care and attention, knights pursue glory, and fellow servants at least experience community. You remain entirely alone, isolated, unwanted, stranded between these separate worlds, welcomed by none. Yet, ironically, these worlds depend entirely upon your quiet labor. Horses thrive because you suffer quietly. Knights gain glory riding animals you've tended carefully. Masters maintain power through your unnoticed sacrifices. Without stable hands, their privileged worlds collapse, yet none realize or acknowledge your vital role. You fall asleep, bruised and weary, nestled in damp straw beside indifferent horses. Tomorrow promises the same endless cycle: humiliation from masters, abuse from horses, dismissal from knights. Yet tomorrow you'll rise again, repeating endless chores, existing unnoticed beneath separate worlds that depend entirely upon your invisible suffering. This is your grim reality, unnoticed, unappreciated, yet indispensable. Master, horse, and you, three different worlds, forever separated by privilege, instinct, and suffering. Your daily misery binds them together, yet keeps them eternally divided, a cruel irony lost entirely upon everyone except yourself. You close your eyes, knowing tomorrow awaits unchanged, relentlessly miserable. Three worlds remain divided forever, and you'll always suffer alone between them. You never imagined old age would find you still in the same stable, surrounded by the same stubborn horses, performing the same thankless chores. Yet decades later, here you are, weathered and bent, your spirit worn down much like your thinning bones. Time changed nothing but your body, leaving the endless hay, manure, and misery perfectly intact. Your joints creak now, louder than stable doors swollen with dampness. Each morning rises painfully, your spine protesting fiercely against movement. Hands once calloused and strong now tremble weakly, veins prominent like twisted ropes beneath spotted skin. You grip pitchforks and shovels clumsily, dropping tools more often than you'd care to admit. The younger stable hands glance at you impatiently, irritated by your slowness, dismissing your once respected experience as mere uselessness. You remember being young, watching older stable hands stumble, resenting their incompetence. Now you understand bitterly. Age is cruelest to those forced to earn daily bread through manual labor. No pension awaits a stable hand, just endless, repetitive toil until the body finally collapses completely. Despite your frailty, tasks remain the same. Manure must be shoveled, stalls cleaned, horses groomed, the newest stable boy, thin, sullen, barely older than you were when you began, works clumsily, provoking your irritation. You yell, voice cracking with age and frustration, reprimanding him for mistakes you once committed yourself. He flinches nervously, not from respect, but fear, just as you did so long ago. Horses still torment you mercilessly. You've outlived Eleanor, but her offspring inherited her temper perfectly. A young stallion named Rufus recently bit your shoulder so savagely it drew blood through thin cloth. You swore bitterly, wishing briefly that you'd died younger rather than enduring decades of equine abuse. Yet, stubbornly, you cleaned the wound with familiar resignation, knowing tomorrow promised similar treatment. Your reputation deteriorates along with your strength. Once trusted implicitly, you're now unfairly blamed for every mishap. Missing saddles, broken fences, escaped horses. Last month, a costly saddle vanished overnight. You were accused immediately, despite being home, joints too stiff even to walk steadily. Punishment was withheld, though suspicion lingered, staining your already diminished honor. Your value, limited at best, now depends solely upon dwindling knowledge. Remedies for hoof rot, treatments for colic, ancient tricks for calming nervous animals. Yet, increasingly, younger hands disregard your advice, deeming your experience outdated and worthless. They mock quietly behind your back, mimicking your stooped posture and trembling hands. You pretend deafness, concealing humiliation beneath feigned ignorance. In winter, cold seeps deeper into your bones than ever before, joints aching continuously, lungs weakened into constant wheezing. Dampness exacerbates lingering injuries, reminders of past decades spent absorbing kicks, bites, and bruises. You cough harshly, suspecting illness more serious than you dare admit. Seeking treatment is pointless. Stable hands don't deserve costly doctors, even if you had coins enough. Even hunger worsens over years, teeth rotted to jagged remnants, incapable of chewing tough bread or coarse oats stolen secretly from horses' sacks. You swallow food painfully, body perpetually weak from poor nourishment. Ironically, horses continue eating heartily, their health carefully maintained, while yours steadily declines, unnoticed entirely by masters who see your worn figure merely as inconvenience. Sleep, scarce throughout life, becomes rarer still. Lying awake nightly upon thin straw, you reflect bitterly on wasted years spent laboring fruitlessly beneath indifferent masters, cruel horses, and harsh winters. Youthful dreams faded decades ago, replaced entirely by grim resignation. No change ever arrived, no hope ever materialized. Just endless, repetitive suffering without reward or gratitude. You finally accept grim truth. Your life meant nothing beyond routine drudgery and silent endurance. You've lived decades unnoticed, suffering quietly, achieving nothing memorable or meaningful. Your legacy consists merely of manure piles shoveled and horses temporarily maintained, achievements destined quickly for oblivion. One cold evening, you finish grooming Rufus slowly, exhausted beyond measure. Your heart flutters strangely, breath labored, dizziness overtaking you unexpectedly. You slump wearily onto straw covered floor, vision blurred, pulse irregular. Rufus, indifferent as always, noses briefly at your ragged sleeve, then turns away uncaringly. You whisper weakly for help, but no stable hands appear, busy elsewhere, unaware of your quiet distress. You realize, bitterly amused despite your peril, that you're entirely alone, unnoticed even at life's end. You lie helplessly, breath shallow, strength ebbing away rapidly. Regret flickers briefly, regret at wasted years, unfulfilled dreams, sacrifices never acknowledged, but quickly fades into calm acceptance. Perhaps death, after all, offers relief denied by life. Darkness closes around you peacefully, numbness overtaking pain, isolation comforting strangely in final moments. Your final thought, absurdly, involves tomorrow's hay remaining unshoveled. You almost laugh bitterly, realizing tomorrow continues without interruption, your absence scarcely noticeable. You lived invisibly, you'll die unnoticed. Morning arrives as usual, younger stable hands entering noisily, discovering your lifeless body sprawled awkwardly beside indifferent Rufus. Reactions remain minimal, brief surprise, cursory sadness, quickly fading into routine chores. Your corpse is moved quietly, buried hastily behind stable, alongside other forgotten workers, graves unmarked, identities quickly forgotten. Life in the stable resumes unchanged. Younger hands now performing endless duties. You've finally escaped. Horses bite and kick. Masters complain bitterly. Winters remain harsh. Manure continues accumulating endlessly. Everything continues precisely as before, except you're no longer there to suffer. Years later, future stable hands, exhausted and miserable, whisper briefly of older generations who endured similarly thankless existence. Your name remains unremembered, yet experiences live on through perpetual cycle of unchanging hardship. Decades pass, men come and go, yet misery remains constant, woven deeply into stable walls themselves. Your life, you finally understand, meant little individually, yet collectively, you represent countless forgotten souls enduring quietly throughout history, men whose silent sacrifices sustain worlds that neither notice nor value them. You're forgotten, but your endless struggle continues eternally, reflected forever by stable hands yet unborn. And in the end, years pass endlessly, but the hay, manure, horses, and silent misery always remain exactly the same.